So there's a closer look. What we're going to do with our taping here. Then we'll attach the plastic to the outside. Yeah, we'll tape it to here, cover everything up that we don't want covered in any kind of paint. So then I'm going to come along here. Probably just stop the video after this because you guys get the idea. It is time consuming and no use wasting your time or mine with filming. But we'll just tape all this up along with the back rail here. Alright, I think most of our taping's done. I did get a razor blade and did cut some corners out that needed it. So what we're going to do next is get our plastic out and plastic everything from the windshield and the drip rails down. I'm going to be using this. Why? Because it's what I have. Again, I'm like 90% of the 80% of the people out there. Limited budget. Don't need to spend a lot of money if you don't have to. It's not a high dollar build here. You know, it's going with the 20-footer aspect of the car. So it's definitely going to be better than the paint job that was on it. Just a different color, but it will be better. I'm sure of that. So we'll see you back here after we get it plasticed up. Alright, so here we have our car in our auto cocoon. Got all the edges taped off, plastic over everything. I made sure the drip rails are all full. They're all clean and rid of debris. And what we're going to do is I will spray these dark areas with at least 1 or 2 light coats to cover those first, to give those a little bit extra coverage so it helps smooth out. And then we'll give it two good coats of primer. So what I got for primer is it's from old school paint company, and it's a direct to metal primer. I told them what I was spraying. They said that this would be adequate for this, and it's going to be compatible with the paint we're going to spray tomorrow. I also got a respirator. Is it needed? Some guys say yes, some say no. I'm in the adage, well, I've sprayed enough cars without a respirator, just depending on the fan, and picked out colored things for my nose for days. And now that stuff probably ended up in my lungs too. So I'm older and smarter, and I'm not going to do that anymore. So we're going to use an approved respirator. Whew, my mask is working because I can definitely smell the fumes now. Make sure you have a good ventilation as well. I have my door kicked open a little bit. I don't think I'm spraying enough in here to really necessitate a exhaust fan. But fumes are pretty thick in here, so I'm glad I have the respirator. I'm going to leave you here in a little bit. We're going to let this dry. We're going to come back and then we're going to hang on the rest of the primer to fully color the roof in primer. I did notice if you saw me wipe it off a little bit, it was slobbering a little bit of droplets out. Hopefully they get hidden by the primer. I'm not going to do anything with them now, but I want to do it in one continuous spray after this. And after that, we should be able to let it dry, wait for tomorrow, and then color it in red. See you in a little bit. All right, the can tells us we need 10 to 15 minutes of flash time between coats. We've given that now. I wanted to talk about ventilation and temperature. Make sure you don't have a bullet heater, hot water heater of some sort that would enable you to have an ignition source for an explosion if you're spray painting in a garage or confined area. You want to turn all that stuff off. You don't want to have a bullet heater, first of all, for blowing around dirt and everything like that. That'll get your paint. But eliminate all ignition sources. You don't want an explosion. Ventilation is important. Sometimes a crack the door is not enough. I don't think I'm spraying in that much of an environment that I need to have a fan running for this. A whole car spray, yes, you want to get all that dust out, because once the primer is in the air, it dries in the air, it falls back into wet paint and makes it coarse to the touch. Temperature, shouldn't really spray anything below like 65 degrees, I'd say. If you're going to be doing an automotive paint job, I'd want it like 70, 72. Check with your paint store first. I'm in Arizona. It's hardly ever cold here, but you end up having too cold of a temperature, your body panels are cold, you spray your paint on it, it's going to run. So you don't want that, and then you want the ample temperature for the right amount of drying time. All right, so we're going to mask up here soon, get ready to do another coat. You can watch me do that, and we'll probably do 2 coats there, and then we'll get ready for color. All right, final coat time. You can always touch around the edges of your primer, your paint, on the taped area to see if your paint is dry. Whatever you're spraying, you can just see if it's dry doing that. It seems pretty dry. We're gonna hang the rest of the can of paint on here and call it a day, let it dry overnight. It is slobbering a couple drops out every now and again. So I'm gonna go over to the O'Reilly and get probably 1,000 grit or 2,000 to give it a quick wet sand or even a dry sand before we spray primer on, but we'll cover that later in the video. All right, it started spittering and sputting at the end as it ran out. There's a tiny little bit left, but I'm not going to use it because all it's going to do is start throwing those droplets, make more work for us later. So better off saving yourself work and leaving a little bit of paint in the can. All right, we're going to let this dry, call it a day, and come back and prep it tomorrow. See you then. All right, we're back at the next day. Actually, it's a few days later. If you can hear this, at the end of the can of paint, it started coming out a little thick, and it's kind of rough to the touch. I really wouldn't want to spray this without knocking it down a little bit. So the can of paint said you can use 600 to 800 if you wet sand it. So I went to O'Reilly and got some more sandpaper, wet dry sandpaper, 800 grit. So it's on the back as well. I'm going to take this and fold it in 3/3. Off camera, I did wipe this down with the oil and grease remover just to make sure that nothing got on our paint and contaminated it. And I'm only going to wet sand it by hand, real light, but everything's going to be the same texture to the touch. I'm not going to film that because you don't need to see me sanding. I'll show you the finished product then, and I'll show you how it turns out, and then we can get ready to spray it, which might be another day because I want to let all the water from the wet sanding dry. I'm going to use this as a catch cloth so it doesn't get on the tape. A lot of times if it gets on the tape, it can get under it. You spray it, it can shoot the water back onto the tape. It can also make the tape react a little weird when you go to pull it off and get to be a mess. So I'm going to try to keep what's running off dry. And the reason I'm not using a block here is it's just a quick scuff. We're going to get everything to the same texture, but because of everything being so concave, convex, it's either way, it's curvy. And I think just by using it like this with my hand would be best. I don't happen to have a piece of thin rubber that I could use to keep it even, but I'm not going to use a lot of finger pressure, just the same mild pressure. We're just trying to knock off the high stuff so we get rid of the coarseness. Okay. All right, so I have a half of it sanded right now, and hopefully you can hear this, but I run my hand across the unsanded part compared to the sanded part. It's definitely a different texture to the feel. I mean, you can tell if you have it right or not. This line right in here is pretty much the telling point of if you have it sanded the right way. I mean, I can feel none of the coarseness that I do here. So you don't have to hit it hard. If you have to hit it hard to try to smooth out a dent or a ding, you didn't do your prep right as far as the body work, if you needed body work, which we didn't cover because this was just a sand and scuff and shoot. Didn't even need any glaze putty. So we'll hit this. We'll have a little bit of overlap here. When I resand it, when I continue to sand, we'll have a little bit of overlap. So make sure I have all this down and smooth. We'll check everything with feel it real good, and then we'll give it a nice clean wipe down and get it ready to paint. We're back after the final wet sand with 800, and this is really smooth. I do feel a little bit of lint from my rag. Make sure you're using very clean rags that are as lint free as possible. Terry cloth I think is a good rag, but I used what I had, but I didn't think there was any lint in them, but it feels like there's still some stuff left over. But our tack rag and final degreaser remover the day that we spray it is going to take care of all that. Also, another thing you want to remember, don't do an oil change in your car and then come in and wet sand and do this and touch this primer you're getting ready to paint, because anything that's oil and grease that's on your hands and fingers, it's going to get into your primer and it's going to mess up your paint. So make sure your hands are very clean when you go to do this final prep for paint. So we're going to let this dry overnight, just so anything that's in the rails dries out. Then look for any other imperfections. I did find a couple of those droplets over there, and I was wiping this. I used 2 different cloths. I folded them in half, and I made those damp, and I wiped all of our sanding residue and water off. It gets really streaky the first couple times, so I did the whole roof with one side of the cloth, flipped it over, did the other side, let it dry, and then I got the second cloth and did the same thing, wiped it and flipped and re-wiped. So it's got really good, in my opinion, for what we're trying to achieve. And next video we will get ready to spray it. I don't know how the lighting is in here for the camera, but just wanted to give another view of our final sand. So what we want to do is just get enough scratches in here for the first coat or two to adhere as best as possible. We will do all of the edges first, all the perimeters. We'll hit that first, and then do a light coat let that flash and get tacky, then we can start laying down some color. All right, so we are at paint day. This is the day we're gonna see if all the work we've done pays off. Prime, prep, sanded, wet sanded again after off camera. I found a few spots that still had some roughness that I didn't like the texture, so I came back and wet sanded it again, cleaned the top. So we're all really nice and clean. It's all smooth to the touch. I can feel a little bit of lint and dust and any other junk that's on top of it right now. So got a surgical blue super tack rag. It's compatible with all primers, surfaces, sealers, high solid coatings, and anything else you want to throw at it. So we're going to take this over, try to cover every square inch on here, get any kind of trash or junk that's on the paint off, and then I'm going to come back and start cutting the corners in with the spray can. Then after all the edges are done, edges, corners, everything like that, drip inside the drip rails, just a light coating. We'll maybe do that twice. We'll come back and give it one light coating, try to let that flash. Can of paint doesn't tell me how long that is, but we'll check on some of the overspray areas. I'm assuming between 5 and 10, maybe 15 minutes. Temperature in my garage right now is 70 degrees. Did rain a little bit today, but the humidity here in Arizona is always usually low. So it is a little higher than what it normally would be, but probably nothing like is in the humid states, especially the Northeast. Before I turned the camera on, I checked all the tape and the drip rails. Make sure that any of the tape that got wet, which you can see some newer yellow tape on here. Here's a spot I got to patch. Some of it lifted from the water getting on it from wet sanding it. So just remember that can happen. You want to check all your areas. Otherwise, you may have some colored chrome after. All right, it is paint day. I went around and secured all the tape lines around the area. Some of it came loose from the wet sanding. I told you it would maybe possibly make it lift. Made some of it lift, so I just retaped it. Got all that pretty good. So now we're going to use our tack rag. This is surgical blue, super tack rag. It's good with all primers, sealers, surfaces, high solid coatings, and all that good stuff. So this is going to pick up any lint or debris that was left behind after we did it with just our water wash, after wiping down all the residue from wet sanding. If you feel any imperfections now, you're going to see it once there's paint on it. So it's not too late to turn back and fix it. Again, this top needed no body work, just a sand and a scuff. If you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching. Like I said earlier in the video, sometimes when you have a rag or a cloth, you don't feel an imperfection with your fingers. You sometimes feel it better through a rag or a cloth. Every once in a while I feel a little bit of a ripple here, but I go back and I can't see it, so it might just be the way that the sanding was. I'm not sure, but sure can't see it and can't feel it. All right, we got a little bit of stuff on there, but should be clean. Give it one more once over. So right now my garage is at 70 degrees. Humidity out here in Arizona is low, so we don't have to worry about that. You also want to make sure that your cans of paint are at the room temperature. You don't want to bring those in from a 40-degree vehicle that sat outside all night and then resume to go ahead and spray that, because that could be bad. First car I was ever involved painting was a car of mine that a fella helped me repaint it. Started to show me the ropes of painting cars, and we started to paint it, and the garage got full. We didn't have any kind of evacuation as far as fans or anything, and he used no respirator, so I didn't. So I was picking blue stuff out of my nose for a couple of days. But he started to paint. He painted half of it or something like that, and he said, "Open the door." So I opened the door a little bit. It was winter, cold rolled in, and the paint just instantly started to sag. So remember that if you ever paint a car and decide to open the door and it's cold outside. We're going to give this a good shake for a good 30 seconds to a minute. Make sure we got everything mixed up well. I was shaking it before I turned on the camera. So, another car movie, Corvette Summer. You ever see it? Another campy car movie from the 70s, has Mark Hamill in it. But during that, someone steals his car that he built for a high school project. So someone wanted it worse than him and stole it. So he ends up, long story short, he ends up finding it. They painted it. So he finds it, paints it, gets it, steals it back. I think he paints it in the villain's garage, where I think he ended up getting a job or something like that. It's been a while since I saw the movie. But I remember before he sprayed the car, he had it all taped off, sort of like this, but larger project. But I remember he took the spray gun and sprayed it on the side of their paint room wall just to see how the paint plays out. So we want to see what how our paint is going to lay out here, in case you did all this body work and you have a bad nozzle and it comes out like a can of silly string. You want to make sure it doesn't do that. So right there, that gives a nice good spray pattern. It's about 5 inches high. What we're going to do when we spray it, we're going to do about 50% overlap. So I'll do the edges, and then as I start to lay the paint on, we're going to start here, do the one run, then we'll do the next, about 50% overlay. Metallics are different, candies are even much different. So if you do a metallic car with metallic paint, and you start going like this and stop here, come back here, come back, there you're going to get what they call zebra stripes. So wherever you stop and the paint gets real thick, it's going to lay in there. So this would be a metallic paint. We're going to paint it this way. You're going to do a whole run north to south, up and down. We're only going to do sideways like this to get the edges, but then the rest of it, in the very beginning, the rest of it we're just going to go back and forth. 50% overlay. going to put a ladder on one side so I can reach in here better, so the other side I can get. Wow, just that little bit, I can already tell that the air is thick in here, so be sure you use a respirator. Don't shorten your life. PPE, personal protective equipment, make sure you use it. It's there for you, but you've got to use it. All right, can number one, again, we're going to do 50% coverage. We'll do the trim, the edges, and then we're going to paint it 50% overlap on each pass. First coat, after we get the edges, the first coat's going to be a light coat. We're going to do a short flash time, and then we'll come back with a second. The first heavy coat, which will be essentially a second, and then a third, and whatever it needs. We got 2 cans. I think we'll probably use about 1.5 cans. I did an entire firewall on a car with less than a can, so it's about twice the size of a firewall of a car. So here goes. Let's see if our hard work pays off. Got a couple of drips in here. That's what you get with this spray can business, but that's what we're going to do. Maybe we can, I'm sure it'll be able to be buffed out or anything like that if it ends up showing up, but hopefully we can hide it with the next couple coats. So we're going to try to let this flash. This stuff here is already tacky, but don't want to go spray too quick because I don't want this to get a run in it, especially on these spots here along the edges. I don't want to let it totally dry. This is spray paint. It's different than the other paint. To here, it feels dry already, so we're going to go ahead and continue. Whew. All right, there's a little bit of paint left. I'm not going to risk it because it's going to start coming out in spurts like that first can ended if you watch that. So it has a little bit of, I think it's just because the paint we're using, it has a little bit of a fisheye to it. So this might need it's going to get a little bit of a scuff and a buff then, but once it hardens up and cures real good. But it's better than the yellow. By the end, it's going to match the rest of the paint of the car. So I think for $100 in my time, it wasn't a bad deal. So I'm going to get out of this area, clean up a little bit, and then I'll bring you back when it's time to untape. All right, we're about 2 hours after the spray, after laying down our color, and I think it turned out pretty good. I actually thought as it was getting sprayed on there that it was gonna orange peel or fisheye, whichever you want to call it, but it turned out pretty smooth. It does have a little bit of texture, but it is not bad at all. I guess the paint was thick enough that it did settle out and lay down, which I'm happy about. Quite a bit overspray here, so if you think you're gonna get by without covering stuff you care about, it's going to get everywhere. You can even see where the caps were when I sprayed in. Here's the respirator. I mean, it's just, dries in the air and it turns to powder. So what we're going to do is we're going to pause this and push the car outside, start to untape everything and take off the tape and the plastic, and we'll see how it turns out. All in all, I think it turned out pretty good. Let's push it out in the sun and get it cleaned off a little bit. See how it looks outside. Then we can take it for a ride. All right, all cleaned up, washed up. Call it done. Top has some nice shine to it. Not bad for the paint that we had. I don't see any sanding scratches. In here there is a couple of drops that slobbered off the can. We're just gonna have to live with all that, but I think inside with the light that I had, it was playing with some of the lines or whatever that really didn't exist in the paint while I painted it, but there's really no orange peel on it. Has a nice shine to it. Matches the quality of the paint and the rest of the car pretty much to an extent, but for what it took me to do it and $100, I can't complain. This top has some pretty neat old stickers on it from back in the day when he was probably running the streets racing for some money. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Do a little bit of a recap, and we'll say goodbye. So what I'm going to do for you here is go over what I used for this project and what it cost me. So we got $14.69 can of primer. If you do this route, make sure you get a primer that is compatible with your paint. Then I got a 5-ounce tube of spot putty just in case. Didn't end up needing that, so I'm going to return that, get $15.83 back. So that'll take our total down to right around $100. Here's the Valspar paint that they mixed up. It was $60.35. Then discounted to $30.18. And there's a little bit left here that I can use for touch-ups and things like that. So it's a single stage acrylic enamel. They put that in these 2 cans here. And the one I have, there's a little bit left in it. Not going to really be able to do much spraying with it, but what I can do is spray it into a little container, and if I want to do some touch-up, I can use that on the car with a little bit of maybe a Q-tip or something like that. Just dab it on, a chip or a scratch, get it in there real nice and fine. So that was $30.18. They did charge me to a little bit of labor to pre-fill the cans. Canning labor. Well, these are for the cans, $18, so they were $9.33 a can. That was the labor to fill them. Then I got masking tape, and then I got the respirator. So I was into that, minus the glaze putty. We were about $105 or $110, if you want to call it that. So then here was the 3 different types of sandpaper I used. 220 to start to cut down the big scratches and the nicks. Then I stepped it up to 400 to smooth it, and I sanded the whole top with that. Primed over top. Used the sanding block, and then my hand at some spots, and then we wet sanded the gray primer with this to get it ready to paint. So for the 2 sandpapers and the sanding block, I was in at $24.40. And then this has a couple other things I bought in here, but it was another $5.99 for the 400. So all in all, we were still probably in this less than $140 to paint the roof of the car. Sure beats paying up to $600 for a wrap. We're paying a shop probably close to $1,000 to paint that. Would have been probably a little bit nicer job, but I'm pleased on how it turned out. I did talk to a friend of mine who's a body shop guy, and he said that as much paint as I did put on it, he thinks I'll be able to wet sand that with about 1200 and buff it out. So I'm going to let the paint get good and hard for that. And maybe I'll just do one of those short YouTube clips on it to let you know how that turned out. But all in all, I'm very happy with how it turned out. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed the video of me painting the roof of the car. Got some more ideas coming. Hope you enjoyed this. Invite you to subscribe and push that little like button. Subscribe to the channel. Maybe help it grow a little bit. I just want to do it for something to motivate me to come out here in the garage and work on some cars. I got one car here. I put a Tremec TKX 5-speed in it, and it took me a year. So maybe had I documented it on YouTube here on the channel, I probably would have got it done a lot quicker, and it would have helped maybe somebody else help them along with letting them know what the troubles and the good parts were of putting that transmission in. I did buy a kit, but I'll cover that in another video. But during the painting process, I mentioned about the movie Hot Rod. What I want to do with this channel is, maybe mention a car movie here or there, and car movies I like, car movies that I know people watched, maybe some people never heard of it. So I mentioned the movie Hot Rod. It was from 1979. It starred Greg Henry, Grant Goodeve. They were the two rivals. Grant Goodeve was the kind of the bad guy. He was son of Robert Culp from. He was a 70s and 80s actor. He was the father. He owned Munn's Root Beer and sponsored a drag race, and his son Sonny was going to race in it, and he kind of had the promoters and some of the staff at the track, like the tech guys, kind of rigging it so that he would win. And he wasn't the fastest guy there. It was weird because they had other cars, dragsters, things like that. He was racing an Oldsmobile, a Cutlass. You know, it was probably, during the movie, it ended up being a 10-second car, which are cars much faster there. It wasn't like you won top fuel or anything. It was just, you know, the class in the middle. You know, it wasn't the fast and it wasn't the slow, but I don't know. It was still a cute movie that I liked. It was made for TV. It was also called Rebel of the Road in some other markets, but ABC made it 1979. So Robert Culp, he was the dad, and he also starred in TV series Greatest American Hero. Pernell Roberts was the crooked sheriff that was in Mr. Munn's back pocket. So it ends up that Greg Henry, whose name was Brian in the movie, he ends up rolling into town and ends up getting chased, try to get run out of town by his rival, Sonny Munn. And he has a 65 Belvedere that he got together, put a Hemi in it, 2 4-barrels, and painted it with spray cans in Texas, and then drove it to California because he wanted to win the Nationals, is what they called it, the Munn's Root Beer Nationals. So he ends up rolling the car. Ed Begley Jr., he shows up with his tow truck and tows him home, and ends up having like a little motel that has a bunch of cottages. So he let him stay there for free. Of course, everything worked out. The only thing he was able to save was himself and the saxophone from the wreck and the Hemi out of the car. So he ends up finding a Hemi. I'm sorry, back up. He ends up finding a 41 Willys that the junkyard owner said he'd give him if he could beat the Munns. So again, this is a really campy movie. I'm not going to tell you about all of it, but and then his buddy Cannonball, who was I think Bruce Fisher. He was also Wolf in. He also starred as Wolf in Escape from Alcatraz. So yeah, so it had a bunch of stars from the 70s, but the real stars of the movie were the 41 Willys, 68 or 69 Oldsmobile. Go back to the Willys. I think there was 3 different versions of the Willys. And if you really catch it, you can see the steering column and the steering wheel change, maybe some of the carpet. Just some of the interior shots you can just tell are a little bit different as the car gets faster. So rather than them changing the parts, they're just changing cars and swapping wheels on it. You can see the wheel changes during the movie. They went from, forget what was on it at the beginning, maybe it had slots on it. Then it went to like the American Racing Daisy wheels, and then it went to like a Centerline or a Krager Trick, Super Trick wheel at the very end, and they stuck out past the fender well, really wide. But it looked good. So there's 3 of those. Rumor was there's one of them maybe surviving. It's called Hot Rod Willys. It's out there yet, but it says Hot Rod Willys, but looks nothing like it did in the movie. It does not look like a gasser anymore. Then the second star of the movie, the car star of the movie, was Sonny Munn's Oldsmobile. There was 2 of those. I've seen them I looked up before I started this part of the video. Couldn't find it, but somewhere on Facebook I did see that the car kind of survives today, one of the cars, but it's pretty much just a shell. It was pretty rough looking, but you could tell it still said Munn's Root Beer on the side, and it still had all that crazy paint. Trying to think of what else about the movie. I think it was shot in like 15 days. Yeah, I'm kind of a movie nerd, but shot over 15 days in Calistoga, California, wine country. And the racing was, ironically, at Baylands Raceway, which is also called Fremont in Fremont, California, or Baylands, whichever you want to call it. And I looked at the mileage, and it was like 100 miles apart, and they're going there every day driving the car. Not that you can't drive street cars, but to the track, but it ended up, with the supercharger and all that on there. He probably wasn't going to be driving it there. At the end, it was like a 10-second car. So he probably wasn't driving it 2 days in a row back and forth. But Baylands Raceway went from 1959. Fremont went from 1959. I think it closed in 1988. So it's sad that track's gone because a lot of movies were filmed there. More American Graffiti. And there might be a couple others that are just not really recollecting right now. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. The car talk with the car movie talk. And me trying to bumble through my first video here with you. Hopefully they get better. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Again, like and subscribe. I'd appreciate it. And leave some comments. Let's get a little conversation going. My name's Tim. See you later. we'll have a Coke to celebrate from Mexico.